Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Rumcast. This is the podcast where we talk all things rum with the people who love and shape it. I'm Will Hookinga, and joining me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, John Gulla, down in Miami, Florida. John, what's been going on with you lately?
Hey, what's up, Will? It's been in an interesting week, I would say. A fun week, definitely, but an interesting one. I actually had
a fun week in these times is always a good thing.
Yes, and I kind of want to share this story, but I will say at the preface, so we'll keep it short because it's not really rum related.
Okay.
But I feel like I have to share this with people. I can't hold on to this without saying it. So
something amazing has happened to you.
It was, yes, it was very interesting. And people might have heard about this happening, actually, believe it or not. So that's why I want to share it.
I haven't heard it. How did I? If people were able to hear about this happening, how did I not hear about it happening?
Well, let's see, because it was clearly a very important historical event that I'm about to tell you. So, longtime listeners will know that, of course, in addition to rum, I also love my family, board games, Marvel comics, and movies.
It's good that you led with your family there.
Thank you. And, of course, University of Miami football. So we have season tickets.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Do you?
Yes.
Do you? So, yes. So we have season tickets in Hard Rock Stadium here in Miami for the University of Miami football games. And we are in this section where we're on kind of the second level, and about the second quarter of the game,
you're kind of like the corner of the field, right? Because you texted me a photo on Saturday from the game, and I was like, hey, those are pretty good seats.
They are. Well, we sprang for good seats with the idea that, like, hey, COVID might still be a thing, so there's less people there in those seats.
Good thinking.
And it worked. It was really good.
Nice.
It was a perfect experience other than this one thing, which was in the second quarter, we'd start noticing all these people in the first level start, like, pointing and looking up above us, right? So we're like, what the heck are they pointing at? And finally, we look about 10 feet to our right and above our heads on the upper deck. There's like this something that is falling down that you can see is struggling, that is trying to not fall like 30 feet to below.
So you were able to spot this thing during its struggle to survive.
Yes. And so it turns out this is like a small cat.
Yes. This is the thing that I read about.
Yes. So, and this small cat is like 10 feet from us, above us, struggling to hang on to not fall like 40 feet to its possible death, right?
Who brought a cat to a Miami Hurricanes football game?
Not a clue, because it had a collar on, so I don't know.
Well, at least they were being responsible. They made sure it was wearing a collar so people could find it, you know.
Anyways, it was the most surreal thing, because what started happening is this cat is slowly slipping down, and you see that they're not able to get it from on top, and so it's like hanging onto this wire by both little paws, right? And the crowd is chanting, "Save the cat!" The whole stadium is chanting, "Save the cat! Save the cat!"
Wait, you may have already said, is this during the game? Like, is football happening?
I can't imagine what the players must have been thinking hearing all of this, because, like, there's shocks. Like, as the cat is slipping lower, the whole stadium goes, like,
I think it says something about the state of the Miami football program, that the stadium was more captivated by a single cat than the actual football game going on the field.
Honestly, it was a terrible game for them, and that's all I'm going to say about that. They pulled out the W.
Appalachian State?
App State, yes. They were an awful performance in a squeaker. They won, but yes. The cat was absolutely the highlight of the game.
I'm sorry, I distracted. What happened with the cat? It's clinging on for its life. Everyone's chanting. What happens?
Yes. So beneath the cat, 30 feet beneath the cat, there's this couple that is in the row there, like I said, 10 feet from us. I happen to actually know this person. I work with this person. His name is Craig, right? He works at the University of Miami as well. And he takes out this American flag. And him and his wife are holding the American flag like a parachute underneath the cat to try to catch this cat that's going to fall 30 feet above their heads. And so the cat finally now is struggling. He's got two paws on the wire, and then he's got one paw on the wire. This was like, I don't know if you've ever seen Sylvester Stallone's Cliffhanger, but this is what it reminded me of.
I remember Cliffhanger.
Yeah. And so this cat is hanging by one paw, and the stadium is losing its mind. And finally, the cat falls right into the American flag, bounces out, and then into the crowd kind of below to the deck below them.
So it was kind of like a trampoline effect?
Almost, yes. So I guess it worked, because next thing you know, there's these crowd of people below in the first deck that now grab the cat and hoist him up like Lion King.
Oh my God.
Pushed him, and then the stadium erupts. Yeah! the cat makes it, right? So it was just the craziest thing I've ever experienced at an event with that many people, and just insane. I had to go back and have a glass of rum just to calm down after this game.
That's incredible. I read about that because I keep up with college football somewhat and saw that, and I was like, that's exactly the kind of little tangential thing that makes college football so great. Is something incredibly random and weird happening at a game that brings everyone together.
There is video, and I would urge anyone who, if that story sounds interesting and you want to see the video, literally just look up Hard Rock Cat, and you will find the video, and you will actually see me in the video. I was on national television.
You're in the video?
Yes! Celebrating. Me and my wife are in the video, celebrating this cat surviving this death-defying drop.
You got to take a screenshot and post it on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I'm assuming your California Rum Fest trip was hopefully much better and not as surprising.
Well, I don't know if I can top that. I mean, there were no death-defying cats performing stunts for the attendees or anything like that, but there was a lot of rum. I had a great trip to the California Rum Festival in San Francisco. I was going to say a great time of the year to visit San Francisco, but my understanding is the weather remains pretty much the same throughout the year. And anyway, it was fantastic, typical weather you would expect. But the event itself was really cool. It was in this old bank building from, I think, the mid-19th century, and had these big kind of stained glass style windows on the roof, and it was a really cool, like ultra high ceilings. I saw the pictures. Yeah, it looked awesome. Yeah, it was amazing. It was a really cool event space, and did a panel about American rum. It was the same people on the panel as the one I did in New York. I changed up some of the questions and stuff like that, so had another really good conversation and got to try some great rums this time. I did try the Worthy Park 109, which was fantastic. And as soon as I can get a bottle, I'm going to pick up some of that. I was able to catch up on some of the Holmes Key lineup that I had yet to try, like the Guyana, the iFlot, which was outstanding. And my reviews, by the way, of like rums that I taste at a festival are going to be very just like, oh, it was great, because you're just like you're so overly stimulated and you're just having little tastes of stuff, so it's kind of hard to really take anything away intelligent. I couldn't go all out because I was leading a panel, I was helping out with some other stuff, so I had to keep my wits about me. But I did manage to try those. I managed to try something else that I will share later on in this segment, but it was really cool. Also got to go to a couple of bars for the first time, Pagan Idol, Smuggler's Cove.
Of course.
I'd never been to either place before, so that was a really cool experience, and got to try some great stuff at Smuggler's Cove. Had a Chairman's Reserve Master Selection pick that I hadn't had before. It was a False Idol pick. It was delicious, as all of those rums I have had always are to me. I also got to try a Samaroli. Ooh. The label, I've been searching for more information about this rum online, and I failed to come up with anything.
They are cryptic. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a label. It just says Jamaica rum, and it says distilled 1982 and when you punch that into Google, all the bottles that come up are not the label that I had. But anyway, so I don't know what the details were about it. I do know it was 45% ABV, and it was one of the best and most expressive rums at that ABV that I've ever tried. Just like so much depth, and it was almost like the rum was like floating in your mouth. It had this such like light,
ethereal.
Yeah, it was an ethereal mouthfeel on that rum, but it was great, and the place was packed, and it was a cool environment to be in. They were checking for proof of vaccination, so felt like a safe environment to be in. Yeah, as was the festival. Masks were required and such, and it was a great time. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to continuing to trying to go to as many rum events as I can, and hopefully I got to run into some Rumcasters there. It was awesome to get to chat with some listeners from the show, and everyone was so nice, so cool, and if we talk, thank you so much again. It's always great getting to hear what y'all think of the show out there. But with all that said, we do have a fun topic today that we came up with. And this topic was kind of sparked by an experience I had at the festival itself. But I'm kind of thinking about this roughly along the lines of rums that have changed our minds in some way or made us think differently, either about the rum itself or about the distillery that the rum came from, or maybe even the region the rum came from, that kind of thing. I think this reminds me a lot of, I have a music analogy for this, which is, have you ever listened to an album by a band, and you've never listened to them before, and you listen to the album and you're kind of underwhelmed, and then maybe a few months go by, maybe a year goes by, and you listen to a different album and you're like, oh my God, I love this. Like, why didn't I listen to this one first? This one blows me away. I find myself having that experience sometimes with rums. Sometimes the first one you have from a distillery is not the one that ends up making you really fall in love with it or makes you want to know more about it, that kind of thing. And I think about that a lot also when recommending rums or even music to people. There are some bands where if I know someone, I kind of know their tastes, and they've never listened to a band I like before, I might be like, oh, if this is your first time listening to Radiohead or something, for example, you're definitely going to want to start with Kid A rather than the Bins, because they're totally different points in their career. You're going to like this one more. So anyway, we've each come up with 3 different rums that changed our minds in some way, got us to see a specific rum or a distillery, a producer, a brand, whatever, a little bit differently than we did before. And I don't know what yours are. I haven't told you what mine are. So we're going to kind of go through these and see what we come up with. But before we get into that, any thoughts you want to share?
No, I think it's interesting the way you looked at it. I also looked at it in a way of coming back to rum. So we have a re-rum segment, and it kind of struck me a little bit as that, because there are re-rums sometimes where you really do change your opinion. So I also kept that in mind as I developed the 3 that I'm going to talk about today as well. So I agree. I think all of those are good things for us to think about as we move through the list. I'm excited. Half the fun is not knowing what you picked, and we get to discover that live here for everybody to hear. So that's
live for us, not for the people listening. But
don't ruin the magic.
I think they know how podcasts work.
Okay,
but yeah, this is kind of. I'm glad you mentioned the re-rum segment, because I see this as kind of like a cousin to that. It's sort of an extended version. So yeah, I've done some talking to kind of set this up. Do you want to kick us off with your first pick here?
I can.
I guess first maybe we should take a break.
You're right. Let's take a quick break and then we'll hit it up, and that'll give me some time to think about how to introduce this first one, because it's a doozy.
Can't wait.
We're back. So, Will, we're going to start with my number 1 here, and I'm going to say first off, I may get some shit for this.
Oh.
From you or others, but it fits the category. Okay. So I'm gonna go for it. Okay. I'll start off with a little drama by telling you. I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is a light-bodied rum, multi-column distilled, 40%. And, not indicative of where I would usually plant my flag as a rum connoisseur, you might say. It's from St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
So that probably gives it away. This is Cruisian.
Yeah, I was about to say, it makes me think of one thing. Yep. Unless you were going to say, Captain Morgan.
So this is nope. This is a Crucian single barrel extra aged rum.
Okay, I've seen this before, but I've never gone to it.
Yeah, do you say Cruisian or Cruisan?
It's Cruisian, I believe.
Okay, yeah. I say Cruisian as well, but I've heard other people say Cruisin or Cruisan.
I believe the correct form is Cruisian.
I agree. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way.
But honestly, having a podcast is just an endless series of learning about things that you pronounce incorrectly.
Pronunciation.
So, yeah. Please continue.
Well, so anyhow, there's a bit of a story behind this one and why I'm selecting it.
Okay.
I was actually gifted this bottle of rum at a rum conference.
Okay.
And it was near the end. It was the last day of the rum conference, and I think there was some people working the booth, and this bottle it was almost full. There was 1 ounce missing, and I don't think they wanted to take it with them as they were packing up.
Totally. So always hang around at the end, because you never know. Yeah.
Tip at festivals. Hang around at the end. You'll get some free rum bottles. So yeah, they didn't want to take it with them, and they were like, "Hey, do you want this?" And I was like, "Yep, I'll take it. Thank you very much." Even though I was like, Crucian, whatever.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone to them before in the festival just because I was maybe a little more excited about things that were a little more exotic,
Sure.
I guess you would say. But, you're at a rum festival. I was there. I may as well have gone and tried it. And so when I got there, they gave me the bottle. So anyways, I get it home and I quickly scan this bottle and I immediately noticed I have some serious issues here with this.
What's going on?
Which is, so this is labeled as Crucian single barrel. And then it says aged 5 to 12 years.
Okay.
And then it says blended expertly.
Okay.
And I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. It's a single barrel or is it not?
Right.
So the first experience I had with this bottle was like, what the heck? This doesn't make any sense to me. So I had to look it up. I looked at it a little bit more and I found out that essentially what they've done is this is an aged 5 to 12-year-old rum that is blended, and then they double age it. They put it back into a cask, a new American oak cask, and then they put it in the bottle.
Do you know how long it spends in the second cask?
Supposedly, from what I've seen, it's around a year.
Okay. I just always, as a process, I'm perfectly fine with that. It makes sense. Where it gets into fuzzy territory is then how you choose to describe that process, right?
Right.
Because then you get into stuff like double aged, extra aged, and things like that, where it's kind of nebulous as to what that actually means. And then a lot of times they don't tell you. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from at just the confusion at seeing that and being like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it totally turned me off. And by the way, I should say this happened a few years ago. This was pre-podcast. Can we shorten that? PP days? This was pre-podcast days?
Let's just go with
PP days is probably not a good one. Yeah. Pre-podcast days
to work
is
on
what
the
we'll stick with.
That. Yeah.
And so I was very confused by it, and it turned me off immediately. I was like, this is not a single barrel. How dare they call it a single barrel?
Right.
And I just was mad at it. I tried the rum, and I was like, meh, get that crap out of here. So come now to a year, 2.5 years, 3 years later, and I still had this bottle way in the back of my cabinet. And so I go and I pull it out, and I'm like, you know what? All right, let's just try to get what the rum is on its own, and irrespective of all of that other stuff that maybe I don't agree with, and I still don't.
Right.
But
let's
maybe
just
the
peel
rum
all
is,
that away and
Exactly.
look at it with fresh eyes or fresh palate,
Mouth,
I
fresh
suppose.
tongue?
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever you
one
want
of
to
those
go
fresh
with there.
things. Anyway, so I put it in the glass, and I tried really hard to just focus on the rum itself. And I will say this is not a bad rum. It really is a very good expression. It has a lot of, I would characterize it similar to a Bajan rum, actually, in certain ways, a Barbados rum. Yeah, even though it's multi-column distilled and it's only 40%, there's some sort of influence there. Maybe it's in the aging, maybe it's in the new American oak that puts it into more of a bourbon-esque territory. I don't know, but there's something there that reminds me just a tiny bit there of that. And honestly, it's really not a bad rum. This is not a sweetened rum from what I can tell with my palate. It's a dry rum. It's got depth, and it's got a surprisingly long finish that is very pleasurable.
Interesting.
So
would you say it's somewhat along the lines of the Don Q single barrels or something like that?
I would.
Okay.
I would say there's some similarity there as well, although I would say this has more wood character than those do. Even.
Okay.
So there's more wood in this, and probably from the double aging is my guess.
Did you, sorry, I'm asking you to repeat yourself. Did you say that when they put it into that cask, what becomes the quote unquote single barrel, did you say that that's new American oak?
That's what they say is new American oak.
So that would be unused versus what you would typically see, which is, an ex-bourbon cask that's used, and the wood character is not as aggressive as you would get in a... Maybe that's where that comes from then.
I would think so. And at the same time, I have to be honest, I probably don't trust everything that is said on this one.
Yeah.
So, I take it with a huge grain of salt there, but... It does have a nice flavor, and frankly, for a $25, $28 rum, this is what I see it on the shelves for, it delivers on that.
You could do worse.
Yeah. So I will say this. The rum itself changed my mind on this.
It changed your mind when you went back. It changed your mind on the quality of the spirit itself.
Right.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think Crucian can probably make pretty good rum. Most of it is garbage, and we know that, because that's, what you see on the shelves most of the time. But there's the potential here for Crucian to continue to make a premium rum that I think moving forward in time, if they were to do that and clean up some of the issues with transparency and how they're categorizing it.
Marketing lingo.
I don't see why they couldn't have a better presence in the rum aficionado category, because the rum isn't bad.
Yeah.
So that was my long-winded way of saying, hey, this is a rum that did change my mind and how it did.
I love it. I love you. You always, you have a tendency to go to the unsexy stuff, and I mean that in a complimentary way. Like, I think that's really interesting, because those, like that rum, there are several others you've talked about before. Maybe Brugal, I think, was one, where it's those that have a lot of distribution and maybe among rum aficionado circles don't always have the best reputation. But you're getting in there and you're doing the work and you're reporting back, and it's great info to have.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable info for us as in the inner rum circles of the hobby, not to just drop those off just because of what they who they are, what they say on the bottle. Some of those rums are really good quality. Are they going to stand up to some of the stuff that we know we love, that are the independent bottlings and the high proof? No, it's not. Let's be honest. But at the same time, this is actually what I would consider to be a really good kind of midway starter-ish rum for somebody that is, looking to get more into the rum hobby, not spend a whole lot of money, but get a very quality product. I would put it in the same category as Dorley's XO, or, a Mount Gay. I mean,
that's pretty high praise.
Dorley's is better. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I'm not trying to say it's on that level in terms of the rum quality, but in terms of what it delivers for the price, I think it's there.
And I think Dorley's XO is at 43%, so it's got a little bump
good
up
point.
there.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I love it. Well, can I take things in a totally different direction with my first pick?
I wouldn't have it any other way. Lay it on me.
But actually, this is similar in that my tasting of this came from the remnants of a bottle at a festival that I got because I stuck around, and it was just from this weekend.
I swear, we don't plan this stuff.
Yeah,
it just happens.
It's just meant to be, I guess.
That's awesome. Okay.
So this is a distillery that we've talked about on the podcast before. We haven't had them on the podcast yet, but we definitely should at some point soon.
Okay.
Maybe let's talk about that after we record this. This was Kohana in Hawaii.
Yes.
Makers of fresh cane juice rum. They grow all of their sugar cane. They are very big on single varietals of canes. They have a plethora of what are kind of called heirloom varietals of sugar cane that kind of date back to the first types of sugarcane that were brought to Hawaii a long time ago. They've gotten expert academic opinions on this stuff and everything. It's really, it's fascinating to learn about, and you should look it up. But anyway, so their whole kind of approach is trying all these single varietals and trying to make that the lone variable that is isolated between all these different rums.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting approach. I think what they're doing is cool. And when you and I kind of shared, because they sent us some rum in the past, and when we kind of shared our impressions of it, I don't remember like exactly what all I said, but to me, we tried, I think, either 3 or 4 different unaged cane juice rum expressions, and they were all at 80 proof. And I think a consistent thing that I felt was like, I think this is like, a good, solid, quality fresh cane juice rum, but I wish that it was a little bit higher proof, because I feel like there's another level that this can get to that it's not quite there yet, because like I felt like that was holding it back a little bit. Right. And at the California Rum Festival, they had what I believe was the first ever bottled at 100 proof version of one of those varietals of fresh cane juice rum, and I think the bottle is gone, so I don't have it anymore. But I believe it was the Mahaiula varietal of sugarcane that this was done with. But it was at 100 proof, and when I tried it, it was like it got to that level up that I felt like it could get to, but I wasn't quite sure. It was just the intensity of flavor was right where it needed to be. And when I say intensity, like, it still wasn't intense. I even, like, what I told them was, this is at 100 proof, but it doesn't feel like a 100 proof rum. It just feels like a rum that is really bringing that like fresh cane flavor. And that's really what it hit me with, was just that freshness. And one of the things that I love about fresh cane juice rum is I really think you often get this really pure, amazing expression of the natural sweetness of rum, like what it's supposed to be. Like we talk all the time about, like, you know, rum is not supposed to be overly sweet. It's not necessarily significantly sweeter than other spirits even, but it does have a natural sweetness that tons of spirits across different categories. Like bourbon has a natural sweetness.
Right.
There's a natural sweetness to Scotch. When I have mezcal, sometimes there's a wonderful natural sweetness to it. But sugarcane spirit has this particular kind of sweetness, and it just really presented itself beautifully in this rum. And so I was just super excited to see them doing that. And even like when I talked to Kyle, their GM was there, Tyler, their distiller, was there, who I'd met before through a screen, but not talked to. I think one of their representatives in California was there as well. And just getting to talk with those guys about that version of the rum, you could see how excited they were for people to be able to taste it, and that was exciting for me. But that really just kind of like I look at them a little bit differently now in my mind about the potential that they have there, because this is still a relatively young distillery.
Right.
They've been open for several years now, but really they're just kind of getting started. And there's so many elements, like what you have to get up and running when you're growing the sugarcane, you're harvesting it, you're doing everything basically. So it got me more excited than I already was for the future direction of that distillery and what's possible. And I hope that they continue to go in that direction and allow people who want it to be able to taste their rum at that level.
Yeah. And did you have any of the other cane varietals that you hadn't tried before as well? Did they have those present? I know they had something, a high number. That was all
I had. I knew that they had other stuff there. But I actually, part of the reason I got to taste that was because Kyle did the last seminar of the day, and it was really not all that much about rum. Like it was very much about sugarcane and Hawaiian sugarcane, and like he talked about rum a little bit, but it was to me like the most interesting seminar that I saw all day. So I was super glad I attended it. But he had that bottle and, you know, walked around and poured it for everyone who was there. So that's when I tasted it, and I stuck around and was talking with him, and actually a guy named Art who works at Kuleana Rum Works, which is on the Big Island. So Kohana is on Oahu, Kuleana is on the Big Island. Kuleana is a few years newer, but they're also growing their own fresh sugar cane. They have a slightly different, not slightly different, they have a different approach than Kohana. They're doing some blends and stuff like that, so they have kind of different philosophies, but they're both in that boat of fresh sugarcane juice rum from Hawaii. And getting to talk to both of them at the same time and hear their different perspectives and stuff like that. But also seeing, like, it was cool to see people from, you know, what are essentially competitive companies being able to like talk and be genuinely interested in what the other one was doing and stuff. So it was really cool. And because I hung around and participated in that conversation, you know, there was about a third of the bottle left, and that became my third of the bottle. So that was a nice little bonus.
I really love what Kohana is doing, and think they're doing great work for them as a brand, but also like important work in a way for the rum community, of just the way that they are, as you mentioned, kind of isolating the variable of the different canes and exploring that, and how much that can really bring to the table in a distilled product like this rum. And so it's
a study like in terroir, basically.
Yeah. I think it's super awesome what they're doing. I freaking love Kohana. I haven't had Kuleana, but I do love the Kohana product. And I think, actually, if I recall correctly, I think it's even in Florida now. So now I finally have access to buying some.
I know it's on its way to Florida. I don't know if that's totally done yet. Although, I mean, you live there, so you may know. But I think
I haven't seen it.
I think someone asked Kyle about that, and he said, you know, we're in Hawaii and California, and soon to be Florida or something like that. So.
Oh, I definitely... Okay, great. So I knew I had heard about it, and I didn't know if it reached our our shores yet, but I'm super happy to have that available because I definitely want to continue to pick up the different cane varieties and just have that in different glasses. There's something about that and doing that whole thing, even blind, that I love exploring.
Yeah.
So it's a really great thing that they're doing. I'm glad you got to try that, and I hope one day I'll be able to
get your hands on that 100 proof.
I was going to say, try that 100 proof.
That's where it's at.
Yep. So on to my number 2 here. So this one is a bit different in that I think it changed my mind in the opposite direction.
Okay. Interesting.
So, yeah.
God, I feel like I'm about to do something similar with my next pick.
Are you really?
Yeah, but go ahead. Yours might
Every
be
time
different.
I think I'm being creative and different, you come and you're like, but I did the same thing. So this is one that I was all over this bottle like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I was hunting for it, in fact, forever, because I had it at a rum festival, and I was like, wow, this is so different than anything I'd had before. And as you mentioned earlier and eloquently put, at some point your palate just becomes garbage at these festivals.
Yeah.
And this was one that I tried very late in the whole festival. And
you're a little worn down by that point.
Oh yeah. But everything was awesome by that point, right? and and so I tried this one, but it stuck out, and I remembered it.
Okay.
Because of 2 things. One, it was from a place that I had never considered doing rum.
All right.
That was doing rum.
All right.
And 2, because the flavor that I got from it was very unique.
So I love those experiences.
Yes.
New place, unique flavor you never had. That's like
right?
That's what we love about rum.
That's the goal. Exactly. So I was like psyched for this, and I finally got to pick up a bottle of it. I found it locally. It's funny because it's actually imported in Miami through Miami.
Oh, wow.
So I presume that's how it got to our local stores here. But this is Zamarum from Madagascar.
I don't know if I've ever even heard of this.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a first, I think, for you, Will.
Zama?
It's Zama, D-Z-A-M-A.
Oh, okay. No, I've heard of this then. Okay. I was picturing Z-A-M-A in my mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. D-Z-A-M-A.
But I know extremely little about this. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So they make a line of products, and there's a few that are unaged, there's a few that are aged, and this one particularly was called the Cuvée Noir.
Okay.
So this Cuvée Noir was there. It's kind of in funny enough, in a Kohana-like bottle.
Yeah, it's in like kind of like
squarish.
Square shaped. Yeah, interesting.
But with this screw cap that just kills me. But that's another show.
You're at the head of the anti-screw cap lobby.
It's an awful plastic screw cap, and that should have been my first clue that, hey, maybe something's going on here with this, because as I explored this bottle a little bit, I fell less and less in love with it.
Oh, wow, just from the bottle?
No. Gosh, I'm not that vain.
I don't know. I know you're big on bottles, so I didn't want to jump to conclusions.
I mean, the screw cap didn't help, but no, it wasn't that. It's as I'm pouring this rum and continuing to explore it over time, the less depth in it I found, and the more one-dimensional it became.
Okay.
And it's because it's dominated. And I mean, in no way have I ever tasted another rum that is dominated like this one with this vanilla flavor.
Oh, yeah, that's never...
Yes.
Yeah, so, that's never a good thing.
Right. So, and I'm sure maybe there's other rums that do a similar thing where they're vanilla bombs. But when I tell you that this one's close to vanilla extract, it kind of is. So that should give you a hint. To the extent
that it makes you think it might not be natural.
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that's not advertised.
Correct.
Right.
Not only that, but when I wanted to start looking into let me dive a little deeper into where this is made and what it is, I can't find anything on the distillery.
Oh, wow.
It's undisclosed.
Okay.
And that's
so you
not
find
a good
info
sign
on the
either.
brand, but not the source.
Correct. So yet another strike here as I was kind of like, what is going on with this? It says it's from Madagascar and Antananarivo. Is that how you say that city? Antananarivo? Something like that.
I'll leave it to you.
It's a big city, I know from Pandemic, the board game, in Madagascar. It's their biggest city.
I love that you play a board game called Pandemic.
Yes.
The real one wasn't enough.
It's a good game, Will. It's a good game.
So
anyway,
word for it.
This rum
by the way, I was told from a listener that they share your love of board games.
Awesome.
By the way, so yeah.
Hey, anybody that's coming to Miami Rum Congress, let's do it. Board games and rum is where it's at. I'm in. I will bring some games. All you have to do is tell me, hey, did you bring those games? We'll play it. I got you.
Did you bring those games? I feel like that's code for something that would normally get you something else.
What would be the gesture with that? Did you bring those games? And like do your hands in like little pieces?
It'd be a dice roll.
Oh god, that's dangerous too. And but to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Zamarum here. So Zama, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I just think that there's a lot of unknowns here. It's a 40% rum. It's light in body as well, actually kind of similar to the Cruisian, but I would far prefer the Cruisian to this one at this point in my rum exploration. So I can't recommend this one for all those reasons. Is it interesting to try just because, again, I've never had something stick out with this much vanilla in it? Maybe. But I don't think I would recommend
the most non-committal maybe I've ever heard. I think it's a good reminder that your judgment can get a little bit skewed at a festival because it's a fun environment. You're moving fast through stuff. You're trying things here and there. You're having a conversation a lot of times with someone from the brand.
Yeah,
I love that I'm saying this having just given like a glowing review of something I tried at a festival in front of the brand, but I at least had already had some experience with that distillery before trying that. So I think I gave it as impartial a review as I could, but just a good reminder that sometimes your impressions there can change. And I love that you went the other way and went something that you initially were high on, and you went the other way after coming back to it.
Yep, and I think that's totally okay for us to recognize that we talk about this in every episode. We're all on this journey, in our own journeys and in a together journey. And as we learn more and as we experience more, our opinions can change. So there's nothing wrong to me with admitting that, hey, this is one that I thought highly of, but I've since kind of changed my mind on it.
I've heard that the only thing certain in life is change. So we can just add.
I thought it was death and taxes.
That's true, yeah. Death, taxes, change. Yeah, there's a few things. Anyway, shall we move on to my second pick?
Yes.
So I'm going to do something a little weird because, as you know, I love to do. So I had these. Let me just start with this. I'm choosing St. Lucia distillers. And
son of a bitch. Really?
And so the first thing I ever had from St. Lucia distillers was samples of several of their master selection picks. And I was immediately like, I love all of this. And we had Margaret and Denny on from St. Lucia Distillers. They shared a lot of info about their array of stills they have there. The John Doerr 1 pot still, the John Doerr 2, the Vendome, the coffee column still. They have this wonderful array, and these master selection picks are usually different combinations, right? Like you might find one that's 100% rum distilled from the John Doerr 1, or you might find a John Doerr 2 and Vendome blend, or you might find one that's just from the column still, but maybe from a certain range of plates on the column still and stuff like that. So they're different in lots of ways, but they're usually higher proof, talking about like north of 100 proof or so, and the ages vary as well, but they're so expressive and they're so distinct relative to other places in the Caribbean that when I had it, I was just like, oh man, this is great. I'm all in. I love this. And it wasn't, but again, these master selection picks are kind of like the uncommon thing from them. And it's newer than a lot of their other stuff. And so it wasn't until the last maybe year or so that their products have gotten more distribution in the Nashville area where I live. And so I went out and picked up a bottle of the standard Chairman's Reserve Original and stuff like that. I've gotten to try some of the Admiral Rodney and things, which is very different from Chairman's Reserve. It's a different brand. It all comes from the column still, different price point. But anyway.
Different bottle,
exactly. It has the lovely non-screw cap that you love. I'm totally fine.
It does.
I'm totally fine with the screw cap, by the way. I just want to full disclosure there. Anyway, we can disagree on that. But I think if I had tried them in the other order, which I think is probably the common order, I don't think I would have been as enthused as had I started with the master selection, because it's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the Chairman's Reserve Original and that the Admiral Rodney are not good rums, They're quality rums. They're solid at the price that they're at. They're Chairman's Reserve Original anyway. But the Chairman's Reserve Original does not stand out to me nearly as much as being distinct from many other rums at that price point as the Master Selection does. Like when I tried the Master Selection, I was like, oh, St. Lucia, this is different. This is different from Jamaica. This is different from Barbados. It really stood out as having its own signature. And while Chairman's Reserve Original is still like it's clearly different from Jamaica, Barbados. It just doesn't have that unique, distinct feel to it to me when I go to it. And so what I'm saying is I think if I had started with those, and I attended an event here that was sponsored by Chairman's Reserve, and they had the Chairman's Reserve Original, Forgotten Casks,
Legacy,
Spiced. I don't think they had the Legacy yet at this event. Okay. But I was trying it with some people who had not had the Master Selection, and these are people who are into kind of out there rums. And when they had heard me like be effusive in my praise of St. Lucia distillers, when they tried these, I think they were kind of like, wait, like, I don't see where you're coming from, And so I think that would have been my experience had I gone the other route of having those first. So I wanted to bring that up from the sense of, if you're the opposite of me and you've had Chairman's Reserve Original, but you haven't had something like the Master Selection, let's say you weren't blown away by the original, don't write off what remains out there in the lineup, because to me it's a completely different experience. It's like the difference between hearing the band's first album, like, where it's like it's good, but like they hadn't really found themselves, they hadn't really gone out there and like done something that really stood out. So anyway, that's my spiel.
Well, it's funny you should mention that.
Okay.
Because I think the person you just mentioned there of trying the Chairman's first line.
Did I just describe you?
You did. You described me. So I'm going to pull for listeners. I'm showing the bottle on Zoom right now.
There's the Master Selection.
Yep, that's the Master Selection. So my number 3 was the Chairman's Reserve Master Selection series. I swear. And funny, you already talked a lot about it, so I don't have to go on for too long, but I thought that when I tried the Admiral Rodney's line, I really loved that one from the get-go. And then I tried their Chairman's Reserve 1931, and that's their higher of the line there. Right. And I think I actually covered this in a rerum on one of our episodes where I talked about, I was kind of like, I kind of felt let down by I spent $100 on this bottle, and I didn't dig it. And I was like, it's good, but it's not great. And then come later, I've now been able to try a few of the Master Selection series, and even done, as we mentioned in previous episodes, the Florida Rum Society Master Selection, which is still forthcoming and still being held up at the ports, apparently.
Waiting on my bottle.
Oh my gosh, it's killing me. Come on, Chris Funk, let's do this.
In all seriousness, we'll give them some grace. I know it's been like the year from hell for people trying to get rum into the country. So
it really has. I know, and I feel bad for them. And I know that even Chris, he did do some stuff for Florida Rum Society members who had pre-ordered it and gave them some stuff just to say, hey, we're really appreciative that this is obviously beyond their control and they're doing everything they can to get it in. But so back to these Master Selections that I have had the ability to try, I really do love exploring exactly what you mentioned, which is their different array of all of the different stills that they have, the different aging components or aging of it, and all of that kind of variables that they get to play around with in this series. And what I found was I enjoyed that so much when I went back to the Chairman's 1931. I loved that one too. And I did it so much. I did a rerum, or I think I told you, I don't know what they changed my bottle out with, but it's different than it was. And I really like I don't actually believe that, obviously, but like I believe in it so much that it feels different. I have no idea if the Master Selection had anything to do with that, but maybe it does change your perceptions a little bit. Maybe just exploring the profile from a distillery in different ways allows you and your palate to acclimate. I don't know if acclimate would be the right thing to say there, but like to get used to what you're experiencing.
The way you're describing this, you're kind of saying it in a way where I can tell in your face you feel like maybe this is kind of an out there concept that people like won't agree with, but I totally get where you're coming from, and I 100% think that's possible, that you can literally try the same thing, and because you tried something else from the distillery that maybe clicked in a different way for you, it can make you see the other thing differently. I completely believe that happens.
I would say I have evidence of it, at least in my opinion, of what I was able to do with it. And I would liken it to culinary experience as well with food, where when you don't know what you're tasting, have you ever had that experience if you're expecting it to be one thing, but it's something different?
Yeah.
This is a crude example, but if you bite into a sandwich thinking it's a hamburger and it's a grilled chicken sandwich,
right,
you kind of have this like, experience, even though you might like grilled chicken. Mm-hmm. So, again, that's a really crude example, but the idea there is once you get used to the profile and different elements within that and explore it a little bit, you start to adapt and find your way to things, and it does become a more pleasurable experience overall. So I would say absolutely in line with everything you said. I think this is a wonderful line. I think if you haven't tried any of the master selections, you owe it to yourself to seek those out, or one of them in your area, if anything, and then see how that might change some of the perceptions about St. Lucia distillers and what they put out in their regular lines, even, because I really do believe it will.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things that's out there and reasonably accessible in rum right now. Yeah, when I sat down at Smuggler's Cove, I was like, I haven't had the False Idol master selection. Got to try it. So and it was great. Awesome. All right, so should I close this out here?
Do it. Bring us home.
Okay, the last one that I will talk about is someone who has been represented on the show before, as has St. Lucia Distillers, but I want to go over to Binley Distillery in Australia.
Yeah.
And so my first experience with Binley rum, it's funny actually, like when we had Steve from Binley on the show, I had never had their rum before, and so to me it's still fascinating to explore and hear about how a distillery works, its history and its philosophy and everything, without having tried the rum. But then it was special to be able to try the rum afterward, having that knowledge. But
agree,
the first experience I had with it was from our little exercise with Ian A. Shear, where we had Ian A. Shear on the show. We made up an idea for a fake rum blend, and they sent us 4 different blends that they came up with, one of which became the blend that was released with Holmes Key, the Holmes Key Fiji rum. That was the one that we ended up picking. But there were 2 blends that were from Australia and contained Binley rum in them. And that was my first time trying it. And I tried it not knowing
where it was from.
Yeah, I didn't know it was Australia, because they gave us the 4 blends blind, and we didn't even know which country they were from. So, but it was clear that 2 of them were like from the same place, because they were different but very similar in overall profile. And it turned out that both of those were Australian and that they were from Binley. And even though we thought all of the blends were good, there was one that we thought really stood out above the rest, which is the Fiji. My number 2 pick was actually the one from Thailand. And then I had the 2 Australia ones as kind of like a tie for third. I think I had a preference between the 2. I don't remember which one. But so when I found out it was Binley, I was like, oh, interesting. It stood out to me at first because it was distinct. Like, it had a profile that, what you were talking about earlier. Hey, this is a new thing for me. I haven't had rum that has this certain signature to it. It had this kind of like the note that I kept coming back to was something like a honeydew melon. And I just hadn't had something like it before. Having said that, it didn't really blow me away, but I was kind of like, oh, interesting. Like, that's cool. Yeah. It's distinct. I want to know more, but maybe there's something more beyond that. But it wasn't until I had the latest Transcontinental Rum Line Australia release, which is a 6-year-old Binley aged 4 years in Australia, 2 years in Europe, that it really like went up a level in my mind of like, now I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see what else this distillery has at its disposal. This rum isn't necessarily like, it's not like a 10 out of 10 absolutely blew me out of the water rum, but it's a really good, like the kind of rum that like you buy and you drink and you're like totally satisfied with my purchase. Yeah. And like, I'm glad I have this in my cabinet. This is bringing me something different. It's something that I will just go to, just when I want to relax and have something tasty. It's got a lot going on to like, but what it really has me excited about, again, is just now I feel like there's this whole world of Binley rum probably that's like waiting for the rest of the world to discover it, because it's kind of hard to get, and this is one of the first maybe more reasonably easy to get releases that came from that distillery in the United States. So it just has me super excited to see what else they have. Like, I want to see what this rum tastes like after 10 years or 12 years or something like that, because I think there's some really fascinating places it can go to. And having talked to Steve, you know, I know like how serious and dedicated and passionate the people are who are working there making that rum happen. So it really just, my feelings about it were kind of, I don't know, at like a 5 or a 6 excitement level, and now they're at like an 8 or a 9 in terms of like, can't wait to try more from this distillery and see what else it has to offer and what it does in the future.
Yeah, you pump those levels up.
Exactly.
Gotta get those are rookie numbers. Gotta get those levels.
So your McConaughey impression?
Yeah. I agree fully. Actually, I do have this bottle as well, the TCRL Australia. I purchased it based on our samples that we got from Yashir. And as you mentioned, I think I was in the same category as you, with them being the least of the 3.
Yeah.
But they were all outstanding, and I was really excited to just pick up more Australia. You mentioned honeydew. I get a distinct white pepper note from Australia Rums.
Okay.
Binley Rums, I should say.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting one for me to explore. Again, the same unique character that I find in there. Really love it and can't wait to hear. I think, am I correct in saying that there's Holmes Key is bringing one out?
I think I heard that.
I want to say that. I hope I'm not giving anything away.
That I heard that. I don't remember exactly. I mean, they're getting a lot of stuff out of there these days, but I feel like I heard Eric K say Australia.
Yeah. Either way, hashtag need more Binley. So
definitely.
I'm excited for it too, and let's get more of that here.
Yeah. Well, this was super fun. Like, I it's really cool to get to hear, you know, I didn't know your picks, and it's cool to get to hear when something changes your perception of a place and like what about it changed your perception. And if you're listening and you have had an experience like that before, we'd love to hear about it. So definitely send us an email at host@rumcast.com or let us know on social media. John is always watching those mentions and keeping an eye out for stuff there. But yeah, anything else to cover before we wrap it all up?
No, just to say thank you. We've got a few new reviews lately, and we really appreciate those. It's always,
absolutely.
I don't know about you, Will, but every time I see one pop up and I see it, it makes me smile.
Yep.
It's a bright spot in my day because it's really cool to see that there are people out there who are enjoying what we're doing. We're obviously committed to this. We obviously enjoy it and talking about rum. But
I
to
literally
see that
never
other people,
stop being surprised when someone tells me something nice. So
it is awesome. and seeing other people out there that take the time to let us know that they're also enjoying it is really a great thing. So thank you all so much, and please do, if you haven't done the reviews and you want to do a review, please do leave us a review. 5 stars always appreciated, but honesty is appreciated even more. So thank you all so much again. Will, thank you for all that you pour into this and all the stuff that you do in the rum world too, because it's always fun talking to you.
Absolutely. And same to you, my friend. We'll do it again soon.